Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel, and I'm joined with Jeff Berkowitz of Public Affairs TV in Chicago. And Jeff, we're going to rely on some of your Chicago knowledge because one of the big issues, as the state legislature is coming to the end of its session, which it has to produce a budget by the end of May, but one of the big issues kind of hanging out there is, are the Chicago Bears going to move out of Chicago? Or will there be some sort of a legislative rescue to keep them? Why don't you give us an update from what you know about the issue on what the heck is going on with the Bears, and will they become the Indiana Bears?
Well, the Bears might become the Hammond Indiana Bears, or they might stay the Chicago Bears, but they're pretty unlikely to stay in Chicago because the governor thinks the choice for the legislature and him is between Arlington Heights and Hammond, Indiana. It still includes Chicago as a possibility. I think the mayor is mistaken. He's being hopeful, but doesn't seem to be in the cards. And whether it's Indiana or Arlington Heights or Hammond or Arlington Heights, that's to be determined because the Bears are weighing the package that the Illinois legislature is putting together. But as you point out, it's the session in Springfield is done by May 31. Doesn't have to be, but scheduled to be. And the practice in Illinois, any significant legislation is done in the dark of the night, a day or two before the session ends, or into June, because that's the way the power guys like it. So the little guys, like you and me, Terry,
it's not the way the Bears like it, and so I guess they're going to wait a little bit longer to see if something comes about. The Bears, as I understand it, are looking for some kind of property tax relief from the legislature, and just to kind of go over what you just said to clarify. As you said, it's either going to be Hammond, Indiana, or it's going to be Arlington Heights. So either way, the Bears are going to be out of the city of Chicago. Now, for the average fan, I suppose if they're in Arlington Heights, they don't care. But it will mean a loss of income, again, to the city of Chicago for all those fans that come into the city of Chicago to watch the Bears play and stay in hotels there and go to restaurants there and all the rest.
Well, the big deal for the Chicago Bears, their management, this is a business, okay? And they want to make money, and they want to know who's going to pay for that cost of the stadium that they're building in Arlington Heights, or that they might be building in Hammond on a lake site that has a bunch of environmental issues, depending on who you talk to. Who's going to pay for that stuff? Will that stadium in either location be subsidized? Indiana says, yeah, we love you, we'll do it, we've already met, here's it, laid it out. In Illinois, we don't know. I imagine it will be. The big issue, as the Bears see it, especially big, is property taxes. Over the next 40 years, we usually determine this year by year. They want some stability, some certainty. So what will you give us for a payment in lieu of taxes? Pilot, as they call it, payment in lieu of taxes, property taxes. What will we have to pay and how much would you accept? That's all being negotiated informally as something to present, not informally, as something that's in the package, and then the legislature will vote on it. And the Republicans may vote against it because they don't want to look like they're giving the subsidy. The Democrats will toe the line, and they'll do what Pritzker and their leaders, Harmon and Welsh.
I don't think any representatives, certainly none in the Chicago area, are going to want to vote in a way that would mean the Bears move out of state. Now, that said, I think Republicans and maybe some of the Democrats as well are going to say, well, if we're going to give the Bears a deal on property taxes, what about giving other businesses deals on property taxes? And as I was just mentioning to you off camera, I saw a clip of an interview with, was it Irene Pappas, I believe, in the city of Chicago. And she was talking in this interview how there's so many businesses that have left Chicago that it's the homeowners in Chicago and Cook County that have to pick up the balance of that lost property tax revenue. And in some cases, the property taxes on these homes in Cook County have doubled, gone up 100% in 1 year. And so, Jeff, I would also say, and to our viewers, this is not just about the bears. When you get into this property tax issue, the bears are very visible. These businesses leaving the state, leaving Chicago, but this impacts the whole state. And it's going to be what's going to happen in Peoria, in Springfield, Decatur, Champaign. As these businesses flee, if we don't have better policies, look what's going to happen to the homeowners. They're going to get crushed. And we have a dwindling tax base.
One thing to note is they're already getting crushed. You could cap the damn property taxes and they'd already be crushed. So the solution is not to promise a cap, not to promise only a little bit higher taxes. No, the solution is to cut the hell out of the property taxes. And the way you cut the hell out of the property taxes is you say, as a state legislature, we're going to reform education. We're going to have school choice. We're going to improve the quality of our public schools and cut the costs. And there isn't one Democrat that I know of who's saying it. There are a few Republicans. And J.B. Pritzker has never dealt with this issue, nor will he ever, because he's running for president, and don't bother him with the problems of Illinois.
You know, it seems to me if he's running for president, and this is a problem across the United States, not just in Illinois, he would be well advised to come out and say, yeah, we got to make schools better and we got to get the cost down. And you can look not at every school district, but there's an awful lot of these big school districts where they are bloated and they just waste money. And you can go through. I'm sure they would deny that. But I bet you and I could go through their budget and cut quite a lot out. Do you know, Jeff, in like New York City, they're spending $42,000 a year per pupil? Here in Chicago, we're spending $30,000. And in both cases, the kids can't read and they can't do basic math.
We don't have to do it because somebody's already done it. Illinois Policy Institute, Wire Points, Ted Dabrowski, who ran for governor in the Republican primary and came in second. But Ted's already done it with his assistant, John Springer, and so we know the waste. We know it's $30,000 to $34,000 per kid per year at CPS. We know it's $24,000 at public schools on average across the state of Illinois. We know Illinois is the highest property tax in the country. We know this. Go to Wire Points. It's right there. If they don't have it, go to Illinois Policy Institute. We know it, but guess what? Pritzker says they're lying, but with all due respect, Governor, the facts don't support you. They support them when they say you're lying.
And you can't say you're for the little guy when you're forcing them out of their homes. You're forcing them out of the home. If they paid off their home, they still are being crushed by the property taxes. And I forget which station in Chicago was it happened a couple of years ago. The Chicago station that I can't think of the name of went down to Tennessee and interviewed people who previously had lived in Chicago. And they were saying the only thing we regret about moving out of Chicago is that we didn't do it sooner. And they were saying, we've got a bigger house and the property taxes are half of what we used to pay. So, you know, this talk about running for governor or running for president by the governor, you know, he's going to be hard pressed to say that he did a hell of a job if these property taxes just stay up there like this and nothing's been done on it and nothing's been done on the education. But look, I want to get a bite in first. We got a couple of bites on this topic of whether the Bears, and you and I both know that a lot of people don't follow politics closely, but they will follow it on the issue of whether the Bears leave. Here was the governor was asked about that question and what could be done And here's his response.
I know that the mayor has no plan. He has come up with no plan at all about how the Bears would end up in the city of Chicago. So that's problematic. I'd love them to be in the city, but we're 3 years in now and he still has no plan. So the Bears have said publicly, and I think they said so last Friday again, that they have now only two options, and that's the state of Indiana or Arlington Heights. We would like them to stay in the state of Illinois.
So that's it, Jeff. But the governor had some other comments at that same press conference, and I want to play another bite here. And what's interesting, when we talk about the effort to get the Bears to stay in Illinois, and we just heard the governor said the mayor has no plan. Listen to this, folks, as the governor throws the mayor under the bus and basically says in a more polite way than I would that, the mayor is kind of a goof because he shows up late at the party.
I present that budget to the legislature in February. So that seems like a good time period to come talk to the governor's office. Then there's February to May. There's all that time to come talk to the legislature, which has my budget in hand, or the governor's office. Again, we've seen almost nothing out of the mayoral administration here on that subject, or really any other. And so to show up in May and have a bunch of demands seems like late in the game, and it's unfortunate that's happened most years.
So, Jeff, it's shocking that here Mayor Johnson has been the mayor for 3 years. He's known for years that the Bears were talking about leaving, and the governor says the mayor has no plan. And what's worse, it's like the guy has no clue when the legislature's in session, because the legislature, the governor just said, has been around in session since February, and just now the mayor wants to show up when it's in the ninth inning of the game, and he says, let's start the game over because I got some things I want to get accomplished. I mean, you just wonder, how could this guy, the mayor of Chicago, be this clueless about the legislative process and working with, other people in the legislature and working with the governor?
Well, the people of Chicago got exactly what they paid for when they elected Brandon Johnson as their mayor. They had a choice. There was a runoff. Paul Vallis, who practically studied state government and city government in Chicago all his life. Yes, he was superintendent much of that time for CPS and a variety of other schools, but always absorbing, always analyzing, always understanding. Brandon Johnson, his opponent in the runoff, who the Democrats just loved. It's even Paul was a Democrat. Democrat be Democrat. But they loved Brandon because he had all this experience as a union organizer, teachers union organizer for the Chicago Teachers Union. 19 years or so, okay? A few years of teaching, all of that time, bashing people till they did what he wanted, join the union, okay? Now we've involved for the last 3 years in on-the-job training for Brandon Johnson, on-the-job training. So it's not surprising that 3 years into the job, shouldn't be surprising to the governor, he doesn't come down. He doesn't lobby. He doesn't know how to navigate Springfield, which is where the legislation takes place. And the governor notes, well, this is true not just for this issue, but for any issue. Comes up, shows up late, expects them to do what he says. It's a joke. Dysfunctional government in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago and around the state of Illinois. But we'll get to an example.
I mean, it's just shocking. It's I don't say this as a partisan. I say it as a partisan to the extent that I want good people in government. And you've got Mayor Johnson, who, in my estimation, and I think it's widely accepted, that he has done nothing to advance Chicago, nothing to really address the major issues facing the city, financially, educationally, in other ways, having Boeing leave the city, having the Bears possibly, how many others who we don't even know the names of the businesses who have left, Citadel, has left and brought those big paying jobs. Chicago keeps circling the drain, and in my estimation, they can't get rid of Mayor Johnson soon enough. I don't know who's going to be the next mayor, but somebody has to take responsibility who has the wherewithal to know how to work with people and get things done, because this mayor has proven that he doesn't know how to get things done.
Coming attractions when you say you don't know who the mayor will be, but that election, the primary, as they call it, will be in February of 2027 with a runoff in February. Late February is the primary, and the general will be in, I think it is late April.
Have you heard about whether Paul Vallis would run again? Or have you heard of other
Unlikely.
candidates?
I have heard, I think he's denied it. Yes, the three likely candidates to be very strong in terms of money raised and name recognition and so forth. Alexi Giannoulias, the current state treasurer, Mike Quigley, who's a congressman, Susanna Mendoza, who's the comptroller. And so I said Mendoza, I said Giannoulias. Who have I left out? Hold on.
Well, I was asking too about Vallis. Have you?
Well, Vallis unlikely. He could, but he's getting a bit on in years.
I would say
Brooks.
I would just say, and I can understand if Paul Vallis kind of figures, I gave Chicago their chance, and now he wants to spend time with the grandkids. But I would say whoever becomes the mayor of Chicago would be wise to hire Paul Vallis as a consultant, put him on as a sounding board. The guy has good experience. He has good ideas. Just my 2 cents. As an American, you don't want Chicago to go down the drain, even if you don't live in Illinois. It has been a great city. It should be a great city, but it is declining, and it's declining because of bad government, and it needs to be turned around by someone who loves the city and is capable of managing the city and improving it. It's going to take years to do, but you need to get someone in who's competent.
Well, I'll just say too, I didn't mention Corey Brooks, Pastor Corey Brooks, been on my show. You know him as well, Terry, African American leader in the community, building a tremendous leadership center on the south side of Chicago. He may run. I've talked to him about it, and he hasn't decided yet. But he would be a different kind of candidate, very strong on school choice, major reform of education. So you're right. There are major problems. Paul Vallis addressed many of these during the 2023 campaign, and and he won. He won the primary, so-called 34-20 over Brandon Johnson. But then when it went to a runoff, Brandon won a close race, 52-48. So it could be done. Paul came very close. The question is, between Giannoulias, between Mendoza, between Quigley, the leading people, Giannoulias has something like, $12 or $13 million already. The others have like one or two.
Who, Johnson, you mean?
And they're,
who has the money?
No. Your friend and mine, Alexi Giannoulias, the state treasurer, has, I believe, $13 million, if not it's 10 or 11. And I think Mendoza has maybe, $1 million or so, and Quigley much less. And then there are 7 or 8 who go down from there. So there could be 9 or 10 candidates in the race. And the point is, I haven't heard from any of these people yet any thought about a real solution to the failing schools of Chicago, to the still higher crime rate, even if it's declined nationally and in here, or to the illegal immigration problems that we have. Not a clue, but they're all running. So maybe they'll tell us some, and we'll invite them on our show and try to have them
Jeff,
on.
as long as I'm editorializing, I would say a couple of things. One, put Paul Vallis as a consultant, and Ted Dabrowski. As you and I know, Ted's a smart guy, and as we've said before, Ted was an advisor to the government of Poland when they were going from a communist market to a free enterprise marketplace, and they've been well advised. They have a strong economy. Ted Dabrowski would be another one to be able to speak on a variety of issues, and would be, I think, whoever the mayor is, Ted would be a good advisor. Not always just, and he's not the kind of guy that's going to tell whoever the mayor is what he wants to think. He's going to tell him what's the right thing to do based upon the experience that he has. But it's going to take a good team. But
well, it's two things, Terry. The problem is not the advice or getting the advice. The problem is somebody who understands, can articulate, and importantly, has the determination to bring about change. And Ted Dabrowski has said 2 weeks ago publicly on the Dan Proft morning show, when Dan said to him, well, you've had some time now to think about your loss in the primary. What are your plans? And he said he's working on a major initiative that he hopes will go farther and faster than his run for governor. So what that is, he didn't say, but Prof said, so you're still in the fray. And he said, yes. So what that means, I guess maybe Darren Bailey's running, because he's running for governor as the Republican nominee. Maybe Colin Corbett's running because he hopes to be an independent, and we'll find out on May 26th or soon thereafter. Did he get the 25,000 good signatures that he needs? So, or, is there those, and Corbett's running as an independent. And of course, then there's J.B. Pritzker, who's running against those two people, Corbett.
Well, Corbett's not even in the race yet. We'll see if that happens.
But the point is, when do you suppose we'll hear from J.B. Pritzker when he's spending several $100 million on his reelection effort? When will he tell us what he'll do, whether he agrees with Berkowitz and Dabrowski and many others that the public schools are failing miserably? That often,
if you're asking me, when are we going to hear when Governor Pritzker is going to announce major changes to education, I'm not going to hold my breath. Right. I mean, he's running for a third term. He's been in office for 8 years. He certainly knows what's been going on, and the governor hasn't done anything to advance that, other than saying, I've spent more money. I put more money in the budget for education. Yeah, but Governor, that's like pouring water into a bucket with holes in the bottom. It ain't working,
Yeah, because Governor, we don't look at things. How much are the inputs? We want to see the outcomes.
Exactly. What's the result?
Spending more with worse outcomes is not a good thing, Governor. So, and we want to know what you're doing about crime to get it down. Just don't say it's decreased, because it's decreased nationally. We want to know what you're doing to get some crime and punishment, what you're doing with the state's attorneys who are not prosecuting still enough maybe it's improved in Cook County. What about around the state? And we want to know what you're doing about jobs, because last time in the first 8 years, had about like 20,000 new jobs maybe, and it's over 1 million in Florida and Texas. 1 million to 15,000, and people are leaving the state, even though you deny it. The numbers don't lie. They're leaving the state, and they're going to other states. Taxpayers are leaving. Businesses are leaving.
Jeff, here's the interesting thing. It's not just happening in Illinois. It's happening in all these different blue states. They're leaving Chicago. They're leaving the state of Illinois. They're leaving New York. They're leaving Washington state. And they're going to the same places. These Republican-led, low-tax states. They're moving from Illinois into Indiana next door. They're going to Tennessee and Kentucky and Texas and Florida and Georgia. And it is a national story. And by the way, let's speak while we still have some time here. Speaking of national stories, we had elections yesterday, and Donald Trump has taken on members of his own party who haven't voted with him. And one of the big ones, and remember, the House Republicans in Washington only have a majority of a handful of seats. And one of their members, Tom Massie of Kentucky, consistently voted against many things the Republicans were trying to pass. Well, yesterday was the primary, and in Kentucky, he lost his seat. He was in Congress for some 14 years. And how do you pronounce the name of the man who defeated him, did you say, a former Navy SEAL?
Yeah, Gallrein, and he is I just point out, former Navy SEAL. I mean, the point is, Massie ain't a hero. Maybe he's a hero to the New York Times.
Well, before we
Maybe
got a little bit of time, let me play a bite of Massie from his concession speech, and then we'll pick up that thread.
If you always vote with the president, if the legislative branch always votes with the president, we do have a king. If the legislative branch always votes whichever way the wind is blowing, then we have mob rule. But if the legislative branch and the representatives and the senators that serve with it always follow the Constitution, we have a republic.
So, Jeff, I would say I can respect someone who votes for things against the party on principle. I have often said, I don't want all of these people, either in the state legislature or in Congress, to be just rubber stamps for their party. We're supposed to have 435 members of Congress who are thinking people and who bring their different views and their talents to the table to help the country. But you also have to get things done. And my problem with Massie is he wasn't playing well with others and he wasn't getting anything done. And you can't just be voting no on every damn thing that comes down the road. And that's what he was doing. And if you're going to do that, then you're either going to be primaried and lose your seat, or you ought to join the other party. But you can't have it both ways to say, I'm going to vote the Tom Massie way and not the Republican Party way, and then think that the Republican Party is going to have you still be representing the 4th District of Kentucky.
He was supposed to be against higher spending. He was supposed to be against higher taxes. He was supposed to be letting the national debt get to $37 trillion. And he never did a damn thing. How long was he there? 14 years? Seems like maybe that. Never did a damn thing. You know what he did? What he did when he said, he joked when he gave his little concession speech. He said he tried to call his opponent, Gallrein, okay? But he couldn't find him in Tel Aviv. He's a damn anti-Semite. And the New York Times and all the liberals who ignored that because they found it convenient that he was in a spat with Trump, whether you want to say he's anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, anti-Semite, it's all a euphemism for anti-Jew.
Look, I haven't followed his career. I don't know that he's an anti-Semite. His reference.
I just told you what he said.
I understand that,
Terry,
but that, Jeff,
me.
if I might.
What does that mean?
I'm going to say something. It's because I forget her name, Adelson, or he was saying it because his opponent got so much money from this woman who was born in Israel. He was referencing her massive influx of campaign dollars to his opponent. That's why he said
it's a free world. If he believes in the Constitution, and you just saw a clip, I'm a Constitution. You're not. You don't believe in free speech. Money is speech. She can give as much as she wants.
But he can stick it to the guy just in his way, and that's what he was doing.
You want to do
I don't think it
Jerry?
means that he's an anti-Semite. But that's neither here nor there. I want to move along. The other things that we got here in Kentucky, Andy Barr is going to won the nomination to replace Mitch McConnell. He will probably be the next senator from the state of Kentucky, as it is pretty much a red state. But Jeff, we have quickly gone out of time, so I'll give you a chance to say goodbye. Goodbye, Jeff. We'll see you next time, folks. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you then.